Hey, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 92 of our Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. I have a really special episode for you today because I am bringing to you my guest, Robin Latimore. Robin is a well-known, wonderful singer in Atlanta, Georgia, and she has performed with so many different artists, and I'm honored to have her on Let's Start Healing. And actually, I came to talk to Robin first for a mini docuseries that I'm doing on Atlanta Jazz Remembering Cafe 290 Jazz Club. Cafe 290 was a staple in Atlanta for 30 years. And I'm remembering the club by talking to musicians, people who worked there, frequent patrons of Cafe 290, and Robin Latimore is one of the people that I was honored to talk to. And that is coming to you soon. But we also chatted for Let's Start Healing. And we talked actually about her love of music, her spirituality, where that comes from, what her connection with God is rooted in, and how that came about, and the influences in her life. I'm going to give you a little taste of Robin's music. She's performed all over Atlanta, but here's a little sound. You know how some people say, you better ask somebody? Well, if you don't know Robin Latimore, you better ask somebody, and they'll tell you. So let me give you a little taste of Robin right now. I'd love to hear Robin Latimore sing Mickey Howard's Come Share My Love. And although that's a song about romance, it's about giving of the heart. And that is Robin Latimore. She is a giver of her heart. Robin has a foundation where she raises money for students who have cancer. And she helps them in terms of their costs and their expenses. So she will go into that. So let's meet her. Let's get started and let's start healing. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, this is such a wonderful opportunity. You were on my limited series for Cafe 290, but I have wanted you for my Let's Start Healing podcast because you just exude spirituality and just seeing your connection to other people. And I asked you just what it does for you to connect with other people. And does that come from something spiritual?
Actually, it comes from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
I am such a product of my parents. And I can't say one more than the other, but my mother, I was very heavily influenced by her. She was a minister. And before she became a minister, she played organ, and she was a choir director as well. So I learned a lot as it relates to music from her side of the family. She's the oldest of 11, and all of them sang or played. And the first time I heard my mom playing organ and her twin sister playing piano, and there's some other sisters in between there, and they would sing a song, and the harmony was just insane. And I was like, God, I just got to have that. I got to have that. But listening to her testimony for so many years, strengthened the faith that I didn't have. My mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was born, and they saw it in her stomach when they cut her to take me out, and they sewed her up anyway. And so she started to blow up, and the mass started to get bigger. And she said she felt as if she was dying, and she was bleeding out. And long story short, she prayed. She called her mother and told her mother, "Come get my kids, because I'm leaving. I'm leaving here."
You were an infant.
I was an infant, very, very newborn. My brother was probably 2 or 3. And he would come in and out the room and tell my mom, the baby's crying, but my mom was so weak she couldn't move. And she said after a while, she felt these thimbles, something like thimbles, go onto all of her fingers. And it felt like something warm was going into her hands and up in her arms. And she felt this strength that she didn't have. And she was so hungry, and she got up, she was able to move, and she didn't think about it. It just wasn't, she didn't even think about the fact that, first she was bedridden, and now she's up and around, and she was hungry, and the only thing she had in the refrigerator was a pan of cornbread, and she mashed it with her fingers, and she poured syrup on it, and then her mother called her, and she reached and got the phone, and she screamed, "Mama!" And her mama said, "You ain't got to tell me. I know God did it, because we were here praying." Mm-hmm. And my mother didn't see a doctor for 48 years, not iota doctor. She didn't believe like that. Her belief was, if he can heal me of this, then I don't need anything else but prayer. She was very, very strong in her faith. And so I now have a foundation, the Robin Latimore Foundation, where I give kids who are trying to go to college or already in college who have been affected by cancer, and that means if they have it themselves or if an immediate parent has it and they need monies for school. That's one of the missions of my foundation because of that. And because of my mother's faith, I kind of too have that kind of faith. Mm-hmm. And, I've had my heart broken. 4 of my kids have passed away as they were matriculating or getting ready to matriculate. But I just have to trust that God knows best. Mm-hmm. I was there to help them when he had me there to help. And I will continue helping these kids, because if you are resilient enough to want to go to school with all you're dealing with and all you've gone through, then I'm going to help you everywhere I can. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so most of the kids will, they're very gracious and grateful for the monies, because we give them some now, and then every year we give them some, mm-hmm. so that they, can continue to matriculate, and they need certain things in their rooms, like refrigerators of their own to keep medications in, and I don't ask questions. I just know that it's needed. And I will be having my 9th annual foundation event down at the Hyatt Regency this year on October the 8th. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a wonderful band that's led by the one and only Little John Roberts, and he is producing this group that will feature Tony Tatum on vocals. And they're going to do an Earth, Wind, and Fire review. Horns, background vocals. I've heard it before, and they are the tightest Earth, Wind, and Fire review I have heard. And you got to be tight if you're going to be with Little John Roberts, because he's traveled with just about every big name in the book, from Janet Jackson to George Duke, George Benson. His resume is as long as Peachtree. So I know if his name is attached to it, and I saw it once, and it was just great. And we're going to be awarding some kids there. One of my big issues is to let my audience know where their money is going, mm-hmm. and who they're helping me to sponsor.
Is that a fundraiser as well?
It is a fundraiser. People can buy tickets. They can buy tables. They can reach out to me on Instagram.
What's the name of the event?
It's called the Pink and Blue Extravaganza.
Okay.
Let me tell you why we call it that. It doesn't mean you have to wear pink and blue unless you want to. The other part of my mission is education. There are 4 cancers that I found in my community that was taking out a lot of the people in my area. Breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, and believe it or not, cervical cancer. Mm-hmm. So I felt that if I got some doctors together that could do some free lunch and learns, and we still do that today, about those things. Maybe we can ward off something that may be inevitable because it's in your family or whatever. But, sometimes if you eat healthy and you change your way of your drink and your, how you prepare your food and things like that, and you exercise, that can help ward off a lot of different things. So there's a lot of things that I've learned with that, and we've gone all over the city, and we've educated as many people and companies and local fraternities and sororities that want it. We bring it. It's a free service. They supply the lunch for their people, and I supply the information. And so pink is for breast, which is one of the things that we teach about. And blue is for the other 3 cancers, because there's some shade of blue that they represent. Whether it's turquoise or baby blue, sky blue, dark blue. So that's why we call it the pink and blue.
Okay. And so you mentioned 4 kids. Were they in your foundation or your own kids?
No. They were in my foundation.
Okay.
They were in my foundation. The first young lady's name, she was a student in high school, which is where she first was diagnosed in high school with a sarcoma, synovial cell sarcoma. And this was, like I said, about 9 years ago. She beat it. She went to college at Appalachian State University. She kept a 3.9 cumulative GPA. She pledged Delta. She was just a very smart young lady.
She had received a scholarship through your foundation.
She did, and we continued to help her. As long as she kept up with me, let me know what her grades looked like, send me copies of things, and she did. And then she was to graduate a little early. She wanted some monies to help her start grad school. We sent her those monies, and within that month, she continued to have a cough that she had, and she thought it was just a little cold, from being out in the night air, when you're pledging. And they found that it was a spot on her lung. It come back, and by November, she was gone. That devastated me to a point where I didn't want to do it anymore. But I had to remember the bigger mission as to why I'm doing this. A lot of foundations, and no shade by any means, a lot of foundations deal with the smaller children. But once they become of a certain age, they don't fit that category. They don't fit that bill anymore. So I'm there to pick up that slack. I'm not a huge foundation, but with what monies we do get, we are going to help these kids until they get out of school. And see what we can do to, get them on a normal track, because that's all they want to be is normal.
Well, is your mom still living?
She is not. She passed away at 80 years old in May of 2016.
Really?
Yes, and she's I'm as sad as I could be, because I miss her. I know if I had the power to bring her back, she would be mad because she would say, "Why would you bring me back to a place when I'm somewhere dancing in heaven and serving God?" So I am ecstatic that she is finally at a place where she's preached about all my life.
What a miracle.
Absolutely.
Her life was.
Absolutely, yes. Very much
wow.
so.
And continues, because I know that she's connected to you still.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So how would you describe your knowing of God?
Well, of course, having a mother that's a minister, there wasn't too many times that my brother and I couldn't go to church. We had to go. We had to lead devotion. We had to sing in the choirs. We had to, my mother had us to to learn the books of the Bible in order, so that whenever she called out the scriptures for her sermon, and if some person was, fending through the Bible trying to find it, I could help them like that, because I know them from Genesis to Revelation.
Right.
And so my faith continued to grow stronger as a kid. And the Bible says that you bring up a child in the way it should go, and when it gets old, it won't depart. Now, I have flounced around and done the things that I wanted to do, but I have a seed in me And it might not be a preaching seed, I don't know, but I want to help God's people. And the one that's been laid on my heart the most are these sick kids.
Yeah.
And it's my prayer that he will allow these kids to be healed, and because he can do it, and I know he can, but it would definitely be up to him. But I want to help in any way I can, and that's to offer the financial support for school. And if I'm ever blessed with a large endowment, I'm going to increase what we do, and we're going to, offer some of the moms that have lost their children counseling that they very much need.
Right.
My very last recipients died in February, and I saw him on the news, and he had the same brain cancer that Jovita Moore had.
Really?
He had just gotten down to Valdosta State and was down there for a few weeks, had a headache, and was already in stage 4. And so he passed away, and his mom, that's her only child. And, of course, any mom would be devastated to lose a child. But to lose a child to that and your only child can be, I'm sure, extremely hard. So I want to branch out the mission of the foundation to assist these parents in getting some counseling that they very well need.
Yeah. What was the reason he was on the news?
He had the same type of cancer that Jovita Moore had. He was on Channel 2. And I was watching it one day, and I saw it.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, my God, this kid is eligible for this money. And I'm sure any parent would need help at that point. So I reached out to my contact.
I see.
And they had someone get in touch with me. I immediately went to his home. His mother invited me. I met him. He was in a state where he wouldn't know who I was. But I am always so prayerful that God would turn it around. Unfortunately, that was not the case. But we were still able to help his mother because taking care of him on a daily basis, she was not able to work.
Right.
And so, we still reach out to her periodically. I've invited her out to some gigs. I treat her. I invite her out to lunch just to get her out of the house and get her, in another type of surrounding. And that's another thing that my music does. She was so happy after the show that she came to. And if I can do that, it's just for a minute.
That's so huge.
It's a big deal for me.
That is so huge.
Yeah,
because I think, it is easy to forget about the families,
Absolutely.
especially after services. Life goes back to normal, and that is huge.
Absolutely.
When do you feel the presence of God in your spirit, and you feel like God is here right now?
Well, my mother always taught us to get closer to God, we need to pray and to study. So reading our Bibles and getting, in our one-on-one space with God. And for me, that's in the wee hours of the morning when I can't sleep. My mom used to say, if you can't sleep, that's God waking you up saying, hey, pay me some attention. And so I realize and understand that the scripture says, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. So I have a secret place in my home. And it could be in a closet that I go into, and that's the place where I commune with him. And it doesn't have to be in that closet, but when I get there, I feel a certain way. I pray while I'm walking. I pray while I'm washing dishes. I pray while I'm in the shower. But it's something about getting into my secret place. I feel more in tune, and I'm waiting on an answer, or I'm waiting on him to speak to me. I'm waiting on him to show me something. I'm always expecting, a pregnant woman is always wondering about her baby. What will it look like? What will it be like? What would it grow up to be? Who will it marry? And will I have grands? I'm always expecting when I get in my secret place that God's going to tell me something. He's going to move in a certain way. And so I just have to be open to that.
Yeah, that's so amazing, because I'm just realizing how what you just described is a higher place, a higher vibration than the request. Like the request or the prayer is one thing, but what you just described, that's a whole nother state.
Right.
And that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I just, even when I'm singing, because for me, even though it comes easy, it's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a gift that you have to exercise. If you don't exercise your gift, it can be taken from you. That's the way I've always felt. So when I'm singing in church and I see people clapping or they're smiling or they're rocking or they're shouting or whatever it is, that makes me feel like I've prayed, I've got my spirit to a certain place where I can minister in song to someone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not preaching it, but I'm ministering in another way. There's so many ways that you can minister to people. You can sing, you can dance, you can preach, you can give. Just seeing a homeless person on the street. I used to have problems. When I was a little kid, I used to see people on the street begging for money, and, it used to just kill me. I'm like, oh, my God. Or I see somebody in a wheelchair, and they're begging for money. And I remember when I was a child, I gave a guy my last $10. $10 was a lot of money back in the early 80s for a kid. And I gave it to him because my heart was just so full. And then as it got later and it was time for me to get back on the train to go home, I saw this same man get up, fold his chair up, and get on the bus and leave. And I was crushed.
Yeah.
So as time moved on, I never gave anybody anything else.
Mm-hmm.
My mother told me something that stayed with me to this day and still does. She says, as long as you're doing the right thing, as long as you are obeying your heart, don't worry about what other people do. God will deal with that.
Yeah.
If you're giving from your heart and because of love and because of compassion, Christ was compassionate. When you give out of compassion and love, that's what's going to come back to you.
Right.
So don't worry about if they're going to take the money and buy liquor or they're going to take the money and buy weed or what. If your heart is telling you to do that, you do it. And you do it in his name and keep on moving. And so that's what I've had to, because before I just stopped, or if someone had a sign that said they were hungry, I would say, hey, meet me over here and I'll buy you something.
Right.
And then they'll immediately say, well, no. So that lets me know you're not hungry. You really want. But my mom said, if your heart is telling you to do it, do it. You'll be blessed, and let the Lord handle the rest.
Right.
And so that's how I deal with that.
And so how old were you when you first started singing? Because you were talking about, your musicians in your family, or the love of music in your family.
I would say 6 or 7.
6 or 7.
Yes.
Because, I could want to sing, but I can't sing. But
well, being in a musical family, it's just like any other musical family, the Winans or the Clark sisters. And don't get me wrong, even watching the Clark sisters story, they could sing. They had a musician for a mother, but they were pushed and they were prodded, and their mother, she heard songs in her sleep. My mother wrote songs. And she would get them up out of their bed and teach them parts. And that's why they're great.
Yeah.
Because not only did they have the natural ability, but they had that drive. They had that push. And my mother, at first, she had a problem with me singing, quote, the devil's music, But she knew that there was something in me that had to come out. And so I think that my voice is not just an instrument. It is something that God gives me to cheer up people.
Yeah.
and to make them happy. And if I can do that, then I've done my deed.
Right. I was going to ask you what you think God calls you to do for yourself and for others through your work. And is that it, or does it relate to that?
Well, I feel like, when the opportunity came for me to form the 501 to help these kids, that was one of the ways. For 26 years, I worked for the Department of Corrections, and I loved it because I had the opportunity to mold people that went wayward. And I got a chance to one-on-one with some of the worst inmates in Georgia history.
Women or
Women and men.
Women and men.
Women
What was
and
your
men.
role? What was your position?
I've done everything. I've been an officer. I was an officer in a prison. I was an officer on for probation. I was a counselor. I was an employment coordinator. I taught, but I didn't. Well, I taught them too, but I taught a lot of the staff for the department. Making sure that they knew how to temper mercy with, what your job entails.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be mean to somebody to show that you have authority.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a mission there too. And a lot of the guys, I didn't mind telling them about the fact that I was a PK. I tell my audiences all the time, does anybody know what a PK is? And they all come back and say, preacher's kid. Well, I'm one of those. And so when the guys or the ladies found out about that, they would secretly just come to me and say, Miss Robin, I need prayer. I said, well, I ain't got no problem praying for you and with you, because you never know who you're going to touch.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was hung between two thieves.
Right.
One said, just remember me in paradise. That's all it was. He said, you'll be with me in paradise, period. So you just don't know. We entertain angels unawares, the Bible says. Mm-hmm. So when somebody asks you for prayer, that's what you do.
Yeah. How do you keep your spirits up?
I think about how things could have been different for me. I was in a car accident once, and it looked pretty bad. And long story short, I'm up, I'm around, I don't have any infirmities. I'm able to make money doing the things I love to do. And I just look at other people, or I look at some of my parents from my kids in the foundation, or, I look at a lot of other factors around me, and I'm like, God, that could have been me. So thank you for allowing me to have this life, health, and strength, and continue to make me humble, so that I don't feel like I'm over someone. I'm just a grateful person.
Yeah.
I just am. I don't, I've had my time of being upset or depressed as it relates to relationships sometimes, or what have you. But when I look back over my life and I see what I've accomplished and things that God has done for me, just using my voice, I'm so grateful for that. And I'll be doing it till I can't do it anymore.
We're grateful for that too.
I appreciate that.
So can you share an instance where you experienced a miracle or a blessing and you had nothing to do with it? It was completely God.
Mm-hmm. Well, I met a restaurant mogul on one of my gigs, and he sat down with me, and he was just so candid and so nice. And I got a billionaire sitting next to me, and he says, "What started you singing?" And I told him, and he was very intrigued by it, and we started a conversation at that point. And he says, "Well, why don't we trade numbers?" And that was really off the cuff, because why, you're a gazillionaire. Why would you want to trade numbers with me? But I didn't ask any questions. I traded. He got my phone, and he started doing something with it, and I didn't have an iPhone like he did. I had a Droid. And he says, "Oh, girl, you need an iPhone because all I would need to do is press our phones together and my card would come over to your phone." But nonetheless, he put everything in my phone. He said, "Make sure you send me your address and you send me your website and let's just communicate." And I did. And I told him about the foundation as well. We just talked about that and talked about me singing and being a preacher's kid. And sometimes it's hard, to be in church just singing, leading devotion, because I have it in me. And the preaching might just come out. Mm-hmm. And he seemed to love that. And the next thing you know, I had a sizable check in my mailbox that came from his company to help the kids. And I just thought, wow, just on an encounter where he heard me singing.
Right.
It couldn't have been anybody but God.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Your dad, is he still living?
He is not. My dad passed away in October of 98. He was not the most spiritual man. Mm-hmm. However, his love of big band and jazz permeated me.
Yeah.
And he also, he had this love of Isaac Hayes and Dionne Warwick. And I promise you, those 8 tracks would play over and over and over. And so he had a love of the musical score.
Yes.
Shaft is so many moving parts in Isaac Hayes' Shaft.
Yeah.
And he would just play it, even down to things like when on the 80 TV show Dallas.
Yes.
If you listen to the music that accompanies that when it comes on, there are a lot of moving parts. There are baritones playing, there are trumpets, there are this, there, that. And he was enthralled with that.
Yeah.
So his ear was always pierced to wonderful scores.
Mm-hmm.
And, but a religious man he was not. But I think he did appreciate a lot of different religions. He was a Baptist. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I would hear him quote what I know now to be the general confession of AME churches. Because I've worked in AME, I've worked in Baptist, I've worked in Catholic, I worked, as a choir director. And so, I never knew what that was until I started working with them. So I just scratched my head like, what? Now, knowing that that's what he was reciting, but he just liked to go to different churches and experience different things. Yeah. But very religious man, no, he was not.
Sounds like he was spiritual, though.
Well, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yes.
Wow. Well, again, will you share where people can reach you if they want to contact you on social media?
Absolutely. My Facebook page is Robin Herbert, Herbert, which is my maiden name, hyphenated Latimore, Latimore. They can send me an inbox message at their leisure, or they can go to Instagram, and my name there is just Robin Latimore, and they'll recognize the white hair.
Yes.
That's a signature of my father and all of his siblings. All of their hair was white at a very early age, so they'll recognize me from there. And they can also go to RobinLatimoreFoundation.org. Mm-hmm. They can see pictures of the kids that we've helped, the mission, how to apply. Right now we're doing some uplifting to the site. Mm-hmm. You can still get on it, but you will see that there are some things that's not too maneuverable. And that's because we're working on putting other kids on there.
Okay.
But the face page of it, you're able to see my pictures, see the vision, see the mission. You're also able to donate, and you're also able to buy a table or some tickets to the event.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was a joy.
I'm so glad you had me on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can listen to all of our episodes on traditional platforms. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. In the meantime, let's start healing.